The uninvited guest. Marcus Thompson's key turned in the lock of his suburban Chicago home. The familiar click, a welcome sound after 3 weeks away on business. The aerospace engineer had been in Tokyo working on international satellite communications, and all he wanted now was to collapse into his own bed. He pushed the door open, dropped his luggage in the entryway, and froze. The living room lights were on. A strange, acrid smell permeated the air, and something was humming, a low electronic pulse that made the hair on his arms stand up. "Hello," Marcus called out, instantly regretting it. If there was an intruder, he'd just announced himself. "Greetings, temporary occupant," came a voice from his kitchen. The voice had an odd, warbling quality, like someone speaking through water. Marcus grabbed the nearest object, an umbrella from the stand by the door, and cautiously moved toward the kitchen. What he saw made him drop the umbrella with a clatter. A tall, slender figure stood by his refrigerator. Its skin was a mottled blue-gray, with what looked like small scales catching the light as it moved. Two large, pupilless eyes regarded him with what seemed like mild curiosity. The creature wore something resembling a uniform, a sleek, metallic-looking outfit that seemed to shift and adjust to its movements. "What the hell are you?" Marcus managed, backing up against the wall. The creature made a sound that might have been a sigh. "I am Crix, Field Reconnaissance Officer of the Ardenian Collective. And you are in my domicile." Marcus blinked, wondering if extreme jet lag was causing hallucinations. "Your domicile? This is my house. I own it." Crix tilted his head. At least, Marcus assumed it was a head. Incorrect. This territory has been claimed under the Ancestral Rights Reclamation Act, Galactic Standard Code 45.7b. I have filed the appropriate documentation with your planetary authorities. Marcus's mind raced. The first contact between humanity and alien species had happened just 8 months ago. The Ardenians were among the 5 species that had established formal diplomatic relations with Earth, but nothing in the endless news reports had mentioned aliens claiming human homes. "Look, there's been a mistake," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I bought this house 4 years ago. I have the deed. You can't just claim it." Crix moved to the kitchen table, Marcus's kitchen table, where a sleek device projected holographic images. This region was an Ardenian outpost approximately 15,000 of your Earth years ago. Under the Galactic Confederation's Ancestral Claims Statute, we have priority rights to re-establish presence. Marcus laughed incredulously. "So you're what? A squatter? An alien squatter?" "I am not familiar with this term," Crix said. "I am an authorized reclamation officer. You broke into my home while I was away." "I did not break anything," Crix responded, sounding almost offended. "I utilized the entry point and have maintained the structure in excellent condition." Marcus rubbed his temples. This had to be some elaborate prank. Maybe his coworkers had set this up, though the costume was remarkably convincing. "I'm calling the police," he said finally, pulling out his phone. Crix merely blinked those large, unsettling eyes. "They have already been notified of my presence. They provided what you would call a non-interference directive, due to ongoing diplomatic negotiations." 30 minutes later, Marcus stood on his front lawn arguing with 2 uncomfortable-looking police officers while Crix watched from the window. "Sir, our hands are tied," Officer Rodriguez explained. "The State Department has issued temporary guidelines regarding property disputes involving non-terrestrial entities. Until the International Diplomatic Corps clarifies jurisdiction, we can't forcibly remove the individual. So an alien can just take over my house, and that's it." Marcus was shouting now, not caring that his neighbors were peeking through their curtains. "You can file a counterclaim," the second officer offered, handing Marcus a complex-looking form. "The IDC has established a special tribunal for these cases." "These cases? You mean this is happening elsewhere?" The officers exchanged glances. "There have been several similar incidents in the past month, worldwide." Marcus spent the night in a hotel, calling every government office he could think of. Each call led to another department, another form, another apologetic but helpless voice explaining that interstellar diplomatic relations were delicate and unprecedented. By morning, Marcus had moved from shock to determination. He was not going to be evicted from his own home by an alien squatter with a dubious claim. He'd spent years restoring the 1920s bungalow, pouring his heart and savings into it. At the Cook County Courthouse, Marcus discovered that Crix had indeed filed formal paperwork, a territorial reclamation notice that cited ancient Ardenian settlements in the Great Lakes region. "This is ridiculous," Marcus told the clerk. "They're claiming they lived here 15,000 years ago, so they can take our houses now." The clerk, whose Namadag read Beverly, looked sympathetic. "Between you and me, there's a whole stack of these claims coming in. Not just Ardenians. The Pellerin Consortium is claiming parts of Australia, and something called the Marexid are filing for territories in South America." Marcus filed his counterclaim, then headed to the university where his sister taught anthropology. If Crix was claiming ancestral rights based on ancient settlements, Marcus needed expert help to disprove it. Dr. Sophia Thompson was in her office, surrounded by stacks of papers. Since first contact, the anthropology department had been overwhelmed with requests to research potential evidence of ancient alien presence on Earth. "An Ardenian is living in your house." Sophia's eyes widened when Marcus explained his situation. "Says he has ancestral rights because they supposedly had outposts here 15,000 years ago," Marcus confirmed. "Can that be true? Would there be evidence?" Sophia frowned, pulling up research on her tablet. "The archaeological record from that period is substantial. If an advanced civilization had outposts in North America during the Upper Paleolithic period, we'd have found something by now." "So they're lying." "Not necessarily lying. Maybe mistaken." Or, she hesitated. "Or what?" "Or their concept of outpost is different. Maybe they had observation posts, minimal impact structures. Or perhaps they're referring to genetic seeding experiments. Some of the species have hinted at that kind of ancient intervention." Marcus leaned forward. "I need to disprove their claim. My house is everything to me, Soph." His sister nodded thoughtfully. "Let me make some calls. The university has been compiling a database of alien claims versus Earth's archaeological record. And this might be useful. We've been developing protocols to analyze alien biological evidence. If this Ardenian is claiming they were here, their biology should show adaptations to Earth's environment." Over the next few days, Marcus camped out in Sophia's office, reviewing every scrap of information available on Ardenian biology, history, and cultural claims. The picture that emerged was fascinating and suspicious. The Ardenians were from a planet orbiting Epsilon Eridani, about 10 light-years from Earth. Their official story was that they had established observation outposts on several planets, including Earth, as part of an ancient exploratory program. But their biology told a different story. "Look at these cellular structures," Sophia explained, showing Marcus microscopic images. "Ardenian biology is silicon-based, not carbon-based like Earth life. They require specific atmospheric conditions that didn't exist on Earth 15,000 years ago, or now for that matter. That's why Crix probably has that humming device in your house. It's likely an environmental regulator." "So they couldn't have lived here," Marcus said, excitement building. "Not without significant technological intervention, no. And if they had that level of technology here 15,000 years ago, we'd have found evidence." Armed with this knowledge, Marcus returned to his neighborhood. Instead of confronting Crix directly, he set up a small tent across the street and began monitoring his house. Other neighbors, initially wary, began stopping by to offer support and information. "That thing installed some kind of antenna on your roof yesterday," reported Mrs. Castillo, his elderly neighbor who missed nothing that happened on the street. "And there's been deliveries," added Dave from 2 doors down. "Unmarked trucks. They left some heavy equipment." By the end of the week, Marcus had gathered enough evidence to strengthen his counterclaim. He documented the alterations to his property, the unusual equipment being installed, and compiled Sophia's research on the biological incompatibility between Ardenians and Earth's environment. When he finally confronted Crix again, the alien seemed almost amused by his persistence. "Your determination is noted," Crix said, standing in Marcus's doorway, but not inviting him in. "However, the claim proceeds through appropriate channels." "I know you're lying," Marcus replied calmly. "Your species couldn't have survived here without advanced technology, which would have left archaeological evidence. You have no ancestral claim to Earth or my house." For the first time, Crix's composed demeanor faltered slightly. "The Reclamation Initiative is supported by the Galactic Confederation. Your primitive understanding of history is irrelevant." "Maybe," Marcus countered, "but I've filed a petition with the tribunal, including scientific evidence disproving your claims. I've also documented every unauthorized modification you've made to my property. The hearing is set for next week." As Marcus turned to leave, Crix called after him. "You cannot win against the collective, human. We have claimed this territory by right of necessity. Your resistance is regrettable." The word necessity caught Marcus's attention. Not history, not ancestral rights, but necessity. There was something more to this story, and Marcus was determined to uncover it before the tribunal hearing. What he didn't know was that across the globe, similar confrontations were playing out, and the future of human property rights in the new interstellar community hung in the balance. The human response. The International Diplomatic Court had hastily repurposed the old federal courthouse in downtown Chicago for the new Interspecies Claims Tribunal. Marcus arrived 2 hours early, nervous energy driving him to pace the marble hallways. He wasn't just fighting for his house anymore. He was setting a precedent for humanity. News of the case had spread rapidly. Outside the courthouse, protesters gathered with signs ranging from "Humans First" to "Galactic Cooperation Now." Several news crews had set up broadcasting equipment, and Marcus had already declined a dozen interview requests. Inside, Marcus met with his impromptu legal team. Sophia, whose anthropological expertise had proven invaluable. Dr. Rajiv Patel, an astrobiologist who'd been consulting with the UN since first contact, and Eliza Washington, a property rights attorney who'd taken Marcus's case pro bono, recognizing its significance. "The tribunal has 3 judges," Eliza explained, spreading documents across the table. "1 human, 1 Ardenian, and 1 Pellerin as a neutral third party. We need to convince at least 2 of them." "I've compiled all the archaeological evidence," Sophia said. "There's simply no record of Ardenian structures or technology in the Great Lakes region, or anywhere on Earth, during the time period they claim." Dr. Patel nodded. "And I've analyzed the atmospheric conditions from ice core samples dating back 20,000 years. Earth's atmosphere during that period would have been toxic to Ardenian physiology without significant technological intervention." Marcus studied the evidence they'd gathered. Something had been bothering him since his last confrontation with Crix. That word, necessity. Why was claiming human homes a necessity for the Ardenians? "There's something we're missing," he said finally. Crix mentioned claiming territory by right of necessity. What if this isn't really about ancestral claims? What if there's another reason they need Earth property? The tribunal chamber fell silent as the 3 judges entered. The human judge, a distinguished-looking woman, Marcus recognized as former International Court of Justice member Judge Helena Okafor. The Ardenian judge, a taller, more elaborately dressed version of Crix. And the Pellerin, a being that seemed to shift between solid and translucent states, contained within what looked like a floating environmental suit. Crix sat at the respondents' table, flanked by 2 other Ardenians in similar uniforms. They had brought no visible documents or evidence, just a small device that projected occasional holographic displays. Judge Okafor opened the proceedings with a brief statement about the historic nature of the tribunal and the importance of establishing fair precedents for human-alien property disputes. Then she nodded to Marcus's table. The claimant may present their case. Elisa stood, professional and poised. Your Honors, this case is straightforward. My client, Marcus Thompson, is the legal owner of the property in question, having purchased it 4 years ago under all applicable human laws. The respondent, Crix of the Ardenian Collective, has unlawfully occupied this property claiming ancestral rights based on alleged Ardenian presence on Earth 15,000 years ago. We will demonstrate that this claim is not only legally invalid under Earth property law, but scientifically impossible based on Ardenian biology. Over the next hour, Marcus and his team presented their evidence. Sophia walked the tribunal through the complete absence of archaeological evidence for any advanced civilization in the Great Lakes region during the claimed period. Dr. Paddle explained the biological incompatibility between Ardenian physiology and Earth's historical atmosphere. The respondent's claim of ancestral occupation is simply not supported by scientific evidence, Elisa concluded. Furthermore, the unauthorized modifications to Mr. Thompson's property, including structural alterations and installation of unknown technology, constitute property damage under Earth law. Judge Okafor turned to the Ardenian table. The respondent may present their case. Crix stood, its movements fluid and deliberate. Honored Tribunal, the Ardenian Collective acknowledges the human's emotional attachment to the dwelling in question. However, under Galactic Confederation Statute 45.7b, planets with pre-spaceflight civilizations may be subject to limited reclamation of territories previously established by Confederation members. The holographic projector activated, showing what appeared to be ancient star charts and images of structures that looked nothing like anything found on Earth. Our ancestors maintained observation posts on this planet during its development phase. Crix continued. While these installations were designed to leave minimal physical evidence, our historical records clearly document their existence. Marcus leaned toward Sophia. Those structures look nothing like Earth architecture from any period, he whispered. And they're not showing any location markers, she whispered back. There's no way to verify where or when these supposed structures existed. The Ardenian judge seemed to be nodding in agreement with Crix's presentation, while the Pellerin judge remained inscrutable, its translucent form shifting slightly within its containment suit. Crix continued. The reclamation of this territory is not merely a matter of historical rights, but of urgent necessity for the Ardenian Collective. Our homeworld faces environmental challenges that require immediate relocation of key personnel. There it was again, necessity. Marcus scribbled a note to Dr. Patel. Find out what's happening on their homeworld. As Crix concluded, Judge Okafor allowed for cross-examination. Elisa stood, approaching the Ardenian with confidence. Officer Crix, you claim these structures existed on Earth, yet you've provided no coordinates, no specific locations. Can you tell the tribunal exactly where these supposed outposts were located? Crix hesitated. The precise coordinates have been approximated due to continental drift and geological changes. So you can't actually prove any of these structures were in the Great Lakes region, or even on this continent. The distribution was global, Crix replied evasively. Elisa pressed on. You mentioned environmental challenges on your homeworld. Would you elaborate on the nature of these challenges? For the first time, Crix seemed genuinely uncomfortable. That information is classified under collective security protocols. The human judge leaned forward. This tribunal recognizes the sovereignty of the Ardenian Collective regarding its internal matters. But if these environmental challenges form the basis of your claim to Earth property, they are relevant to these proceedings. The Ardenian judge chittered something in its native language, causing Crix to stiffen. After a moment of apparent internal debate, Crix activated the holographic projector again. The image that appeared shocked everyone in the room. It showed a planet, presumably the Ardenian homeworld, with vast areas covered in what looked like crystalline formations that glowed an ominous purple. Cities were encased in protective domes, and what appeared to be evacuation vessels orbited the planet. The Epsilon Eridani system has entered a phase of heightened radiation, Crix explained reluctantly. This radiation interacts with our silicon-based biology in ways that are destructive. Our scientists project that within 5 Earth years, our homeworld will be uninhabitable for our species. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Marcus exchanged glances with his team. This changed everything. Why not simply request asylum or negotiate for settlement territories? Eliza asked, her tone softening slightly. Why resort to these ancestral claims that you must know are scientifically questionable? The Pellerin judge's containment suit emitted a soft tone, and it spoke for the first time, its voice resonating oddly in the chamber. I believe this question cuts to the heart of the matter. The tribunal would appreciate a direct answer. Crix looked to the Ardenian judge, who gave what appeared to be a gesture of resignation. The collective council determined that appeals for asylum would be denied, based on humanity's historical treatment of refugees. The ancestral claims strategy was deemed more likely to succeed, utilizing the Galactic Confederation's legal framework to secure necessary territories. The courtroom erupted in discussions. Judge Okafor called for order, then announced a 1-hour recess for the tribunal to consider this new information. In a side room, Marcus and his team huddled together. They're refugees, Sophia said, her voice filled with compassion. They're facing extinction, and thought we'd turn them away. So they decided to just take what they needed instead, Marcus replied, his anger at the deception still fresh. There are proper channels for this. Dr. Patel was scrolling through data on his tablet. If what they're saying about the radiation is true, their situation is dire. Silicon-based life forms would essentially crystallize under the type of radiation they're describing. Marcus paced the room, thinking hard. He'd been fighting for his home, but now he was confronted with the extinction of an entire species. Yet the deception bothered him deeply. How could any lasting relationship between species be built on lies? When the tribunal reconvened, both sides were asked to present closing statements. Eliza stood first. Your Honors, we came to this tribunal seeking justice for a single property owner, but we now find ourselves addressing a much larger issue, the potential displacement of an entire species. While we sympathize with the Ardenian situation, we cannot condone the method they've chosen. Deception and unlawful occupation are not the foundation for peaceful coexistence between our species. She paused, looking at Marcus, who nodded for her to continue with what they'd discussed during the recess. That said, my client wishes to propose an alternative solution. The human legal concept of eminent domain allows for the acquisition of private property for public necessity, with fair compensation to the owner. If the Ardenian collective wishes to establish legitimate settlements on Earth, we suggest they work through proper diplomatic channels, negotiating directly with Earth governments for suitable territories, with fair compensation to any displaced property owners. Crix rose next. The collective acknowledges that our approach has created friction. Our scientists believe speed was essential to establish environmental adaptation nodes before the radiation effects spread further. However, we recognize that our methods have undermined potential trust between our species. The 3 judges conferred briefly. Then Judge Okafor delivered their ruling. This tribunal finds that the respondent's claim of ancestral rights is not supported by sufficient evidence and is therefore invalid under both Earth law and Galactic Confederation standards. The property in question legally belongs to Marcus Thompson, and all unauthorized occupants must vacate within 7 Earth days. Marcus felt a surge of victory, but the judge wasn't finished. However, given the humanitarian crisis facing the Ardenian people, this tribunal recommends the immediate establishment of a joint Earth-Ardenian Commission to identify suitable territories for Ardenian settlement, with fair compensation for any affected human property owners. We further recommend that the Ardenian collective share their environmental adaptation technology, which may prove valuable as Earth faces its own climate challenges. 1 month later, Marcus stood in his fully restored living room. The house still smelled faintly of the acrid odor Crix had brought with him. but it was fading. The damage from the alien equipment had been repaired, at the Ardenian collective's expense. His doorbell rang. Outside stood Sophia, holding a tablet with breaking news. "They've reached an agreement," she said excitedly. "The UN and the Ardenian collective have signed the Chicago Accords. The Ardenians get settlement rights in specific unpopulated regions in exchange for sharing their environmental and medical technology." Marcus smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "And Crix, appointed as official liaison to the Chicago settlement. He actually asked if he could meet with you, said he respects your remarkable determination." Marcus considered this. His anger had faded as he learned more about the desperate situation the Ardenians faced. Their approach had been wrong, but their motivation, survival, was something any human could understand. "Tell him he can come by next week," Marcus decided. But this time, he should use the doorbell. That evening, as news reports showed the first official Ardenian settlement being established in a previously uninhabitable region of Australia's outback, Marcus reflected on how quickly everything had changed. Humanity had stood its ground, defended its rights, but also found a way to help a species in need. The house around him, his house, felt different now. It wasn't just his home anymore. It was a symbol of humanity's first successful negotiation with an alien species as equals, and that, Marcus thought, was worth far more than property. In the following years, the case of Thompson v. Crix would be studied in schools worldwide as the turning point in human-alien relations, the moment when humanity proved it could be both strong in defense of its rights and compassionate in the face of another species' suffering. It wasn't just a victory for one homeowner, but a triumph for humanity's place in the galactic community.